I am absolutely delighted to play a set of tunes with two of my very favourite musicians, Martin Hayes from East Clare and Jimmy Keane from Chicago. Well, at least I know him as from Chicago. He was actually born in London through no fault of his own. But at a very early age, he moved to Chicago and is a master of the piano accordion. I first met Jimmy in 1975 when I went out there hired by the Smithsonian Institution to do research on traditional Irish musicians in America. And later I met him in 1978 when I was part of the first fieldwork project initiated by the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress, and I spent a summer in Chicago. Over the years, I've played an awful lot with Jimmy. I've played with him all over America, really, with the Greenfields of America, but often just myself and himself and our old friend Robbie O'Connell, who's now back in his native Waterford. And for decades, we toured all over the country, and we made a few recordings along the way. And Jimmy is just a pure dinger, as we call it in Limerick, on the piano accordion. Martin Hayes, I didn't meet when I was spending the 3 months in Chicago because he hadn't yet arrived there in 1978. But he arrived in 1985 and he became a really renowned figure in Irish American music and continued, of course, to be in Irish music ever since. And I hardly need to introduce Martin. He's one of the greatest fiddlers in the history of Irish music with his own very distinctive style, rooted though not confined to the East Clare area where he grew up. And of course, he was very influenced by his father, P.J. Hayes, one of the great musicians of the 20th century in Ireland. The tunes we're going to play are a tune called Joe Bane's, named after a musician in East Clare named Feakle, where Martin came from. And a tune called The Road to Downtown, which was, it was composed by a man called Terry Teahan from Downtown near Castleisland in County Kerry. And I met him and spent a lot of time with him in 1978 and in subsequent years in Chicago. He was a very, very colourful character. His name was Terry Teahan, but nobody ever called him Terry. They called him Cuz. And he called everyone else Cuz as well. And the reason being that back at a time when you could get claimed out to America by a cousin, didn't have to be a brother or sister or a wife or a husband or a fiance or anything like that. If you were a cousin, you could claim somebody out and guarantee them when they arrived in the Chicago area. And he did that for so many people, he couldn't remember their names. And he called them Cuz and they called him Cuz. And that's the story of how he got his name. But he composed an awful lot of tunes very much in the Sliabh Luachra style associated with the Kerry, Cork and West Limerick border there. And a lot of slides and polkas and hornpipes and tunes that sounded very much as they still, even though he was in Chicago all those years, that still sounded as if they'd come from the Sliabh Luachra area. He was very influenced by Pádraig O'Keeffe, the great fiddler and fiddle teacher. And that's The Road to Downtown. Joe Bane's, I let Martin Hayes tell you about Joe Bane and the tune himself.
I'm delighted to be getting to play a couple of tunes with my good friends Jimmy Keane and Mick Moloney. We're going to play two tunes. The first one is called Joe Bane's and the second one is called The Road to Downtown. Now, I got the first tune from Joe Bane. He was a whistle player who lived close to where I grew up, close to the village of Feakle in East County Clare. And he had a beautiful, simple way of playing. He was a reclusive man. He never married. He was a very quiet, gentle, self-effacing kind of individual. But he loved his music and he loved the tunes. And when he played, there was that love and enjoyment and kind of egolessness, I suppose, was part of his music. And so it had a kind of a charm and a specialness and a ring of truth about it.
Well, that was Martin Hayes. Actually speaking to everyone from Madrid in Spain, and we're a multi-continental trio here today, and Martin has been living in Spain now for quite a while, going back and forth to Ireland whenever conditions permit. Jimmy Keane would like to say a few words about Cuz Teahan and about the Irish music scene in Chicago that Cuz and he were part of when I first met them.
Thanks, Mick. And thanks for this wonderful series by Memory Inspired and for joining myself, yourself, and me old buddy, the brilliant Martin Hayes, together for these 2 tunes. Growing up and learning Irish music in Chicago was unbeatable. Although we were small in numbers, the power of this beautiful music and culture was bestowed upon us by some amazingly talented and loving people just like Cuz. He was a pure joy to be with between the tunes he wrote, those he remembered as a kid, before he stopped playing in the middle years and later resumed, the stories and his funny sayings around his tunes. If I was getting a bit rambunctious during our many travels together for gigs, he'd stop me and say, "You know what Mary O'Shea said to her dog, Cuz?" "No, Cuz, what?" "There's a toe close to your hole." Anyway, in closing, I'd like to share with you this poem written by Cuz in 1987, a few years before he died. It is just a glint of the man he was. Of all the undertakers, Tom Ahern, you are the best. When I finally pass away, you can lay me down to rest. Calvary is my burying place adjacent to the lake. Be sure and plant me deep enough so a walk I cannot take. My funeral arrangements already have been made. There will be no going back to restaurants and no flowers. They always fade. Instead, I want the Bunch of Keys played by Jimmy Keane with Marty, Liz, and Michael bringing up the sweet refrain. And if they play it good enough, I might decide to shout, "If you are there, you narebacks, why don't you let me out?" Love you, Cuz.
Jimmy Keane there, most eloquent as usual in Chicago. So here am I in Bangkok, Martin Hayes in Madrid, Spain, and Jimmy Keane in Chicago, and we're going to play Joe Bane's Schottish and Cuz Teahan's The Road to Downtown.